Hello and welcome to State Matters. You are in for a great show today with my two guests. She is the longtime manager for the town of Plymouth, and he is the person responsible for directing and executing Governor Baker's housing and community development, job creation, business development, consumer affairs, and business regulations. I'm very pleased to welcome Plymouth Town Manager Melissa Arrighi and the Secretary of Housing and Economic Development for the Commonwealth, Jay Ash. Well, thank you both for joining me today. I really appreciate that. And we start every show with learning who our guests are. So Melissa, you've been on before, but quickly tell us a little bit about Melissa and how you've got to where you are today.
Yes, I've been on the show before. I am the town manager in Plymouth.
How long have you been town manager for?
Well, I've been with the community since December of 2004, but I started out as the assistant town manager under Mark Sylvia. Been through an additional town manager since then, but I've been on board as the full-time permanent town manager since 2012.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. How did you get to this point? What did you do before this?
I think I was always interested in local government. It really started that I had spent 13 years working at Bridgewater State, at the time Bridgewater State College, well before it was a university, and I became involved in local government politics in Bridgewater. What we found at the college is there was a rough relationship in many ways, a misunderstanding between the town itself and the college, and the resources the college used, whether it was police, fire, whatever it was, or the kids being downtown. And I think that the college would sometimes become a little frustrated that the community didn't realize what a great impact they had on all the local businesses. So I got involved in that town gown and then involved on different boards and committees. It led me into the Master's in Public Administration. I went down the Cape for a couple of years, and here I am.
Yeah, that's great. And Mr. Secretary, the same thing with you, though. You were as town manager.
Mr. Secretary, yes, I was the Melissa of Chelsea.
That's right, exactly.
So
yeah.
I was a city manager in Chelsea for 14 years, a place I grew up in.
Yeah.
Really
How did you get to
rewarding.
that point?
You know, I had been involved in politics almost all my life. My first campaign, I was 10 years old.
Really?
My first congressional campaign was Ed Markey's first campaign for Congress. He was a state rep from Malden at the time. So I'd always been involved and active. Chelsea's a small town. You know, it's a city, but a small town. So everybody knew me. I knew everybody. And I was working in the legislature at the time as a staff director, the House Majority Leader. I did that for 11 years in the legislature. It was time to leave, and I went back home and was planning director for 4 years, and then got elevated to city manager for 14 years. Great experience. Right.
And you did a great job in that community, too.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'm very excited about the things that are happening there. And then the last 4 years, I've been secretary. Governor called me right after he got elected and said, I'd like you to come on board. I want you to be my Secretary of Housing and Economic Development. So I said yes, not realizing that I had also said yes to insurance, banking, consumer protection, professional licensure, division of standards, and telecommunications.
Yeah, let's get into that a little bit. Your role is very diverse. I mean, I did some research and found out all these departments that are under you.
Probably some that I don't even know that I have, right?
Have you met some of these
all
people?
All yes, exactly. So
Talk about some of these.
I joke with the governor all the time that I was 3 secretaries at one time. So there were 3 different secretariats that over the years have been combined into one. So the idea is that the outward-facing actions of state government I have authority over. And so there's a lot of synergy between what happens in the banking world and what happens in economic development and what happens in housing. So it's you know, sometimes it's a challenge to get to see everybody and to put on the different hats that you have to put on, but we all have to put on, you know, and I know you do because as town manager, every day you don't know what you're going to face and you have to put on a different hat all the time.
So talk about that call, though, from a Republican governor
it was awesome.
to a Democrat.
It was awesome.
Were you surprised at that?
No, candidly, the candidate Baker had mentioned to me during the campaign that he might be calling if things went his way, and I was a supporter.
Did you know him prior to that?
Yeah, you know, I've known Governor Baker for 25 years. I wouldn't say we were friendly; we were acquaintances. A little secret for the rest of you: I'm the same size as the governor, as you know.
Well, I was going to ask that. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. When I'm in the room,
you can't be taller than him.
When I'm in the room, he's a little bit taller. I have to bend at the knees, but otherwise. So a little secret for you is that when we're at functions together, we kind of see over everybody's head. We don't have to talk to each other. We can just wink and blink. So I was in a lot of rooms with him over 25 years, and we kind of had that connection.
That's
but you know, spent a lot of time talking to him and saw that our perspective on government, on communities, on business development all aligned. So he asked me to be part of the team, and I have to tell you that this is going to sound maybe a little bit like bragging, but I always thought that I'd be secretary someday.
Really?
Well, I'd been involved in government all my life, right? So, you know, at increasingly higher levels, and being a town administrator, a town manager, or a city manager, you get to do things and develop a resume and get to meet people. And so I always felt like I'd be secretary someday. I would have lost a bet if I said it was going to be in a Republican administration. But now that I'm in a Republican administration, it's been great. And you know, people ask me all the time, what's the surprise about it? And I tell them that I thought that there would be an orientation. Right, I'm a Democrat all my life, 56 years now, right? And as I said to the governor when I said yes, I said, Governor, you know that I've not only campaigned against Republicans in my life, but I may have done a dastardly thing or two during those campaigns. And he said, that's okay, I want you part of the team. I thought for sure there'd be an orientation. Somebody has to teach me what it's like to be a Republican administrator. First cabinet meeting goes, second cabinet meeting goes, don't hear it at all. And so finally, after about 10 cabinet meetings, I said to myself, why am I not hearing this Republican doctrine? And then it hit me that the governor really doesn't care much about the Republican way of doing things or the Democratic way of doing things. He only cares about the right way of doing things. And that's perfect. The bipartisanship that we've developed on Beacon Hill is testament to that. When I came back to the legislature after being gone for 18 years, a lot of my friends were there, and they all said, you know, welcome back, but the honeymoon's only going to last a day. And then it was a week, and then 6 months, and then a year. It's been 3.5 years, and the relationship between the governor and the legislature has been great.
And it's very similar to the town, and we have talked about this in the past when I was on the board and you were town manager. It's all about getting the work done for the people. That's really what it is. And it's about collaborating with everyone to try to get things done. For example, like the new town hall that we have. It's that collaboration with getting all the boards together, everyone working together for a common goal, to get to that common goal. And that's what it does feel like on Beacon Hill for me as a new legislator as well. So I don't know anything different, but it is that collaboration, which is great, which is the way I was when I was a selectman. So it's kind of carried forward. So I do appreciate the administration and what they've done to do that collaboration across aisles.
I call it the 90-10 rule. I have a 90-10 rule. 90% of the people agree on 90% of the same things.
Correct.
And 10% of the people often dictate what the debates are, and we focus on those 10% of the things that we don't agree on. So if you think about 90-10, we share an awful lot in common. And now I've learned that. So 4 years now I'm in a Republican administration, and every day there's collaboration between Republicans and Democrats on moving the Commonwealth forward and doing the very best for people. So 90-10 rule has always been part of me, and this experience has validated that.
Yeah, that's great. Melissa, in the last 4 years, there's been a lot of, we're going to talk about economic development first, and we'll talk a little bit about housing as well, but the town has benefited from the Baker-Polito administration in a lot of ways with economic development, mass work grants. Can you talk about some of the things that have come this way, and how have they helped the town of Plymouth?
So, under this administration, we have seen an absolute rejuvenation of excitement, and it isn't just about the collaboration, it's the support that communities, and not just Plymouth, although that's certainly our focus. As I meet with the other South Shore town managers, we find that this administration, and maybe it's because of so much background in city and town governance, has led to support for so much of what we want to do. The community compact alone was something that made a big difference, forced us to, in a very focused way, with an incredible amount of support from the administration, look at best practices, look at what we can adopt, what can we share on, what can we focus on, and most importantly, what can we actually accomplish? Because many times you see that government, we work slowly. There's a reason for that. It has to be methodical. You have to have, you have to incorporate a lot of different interest groups. You have to make sure you get the word out there so people don't think that you're, you know, what are some of the things that you hear, operating in a vacuum, or we haven't included everybody in, or you haven't talked about this at all, and you did it behind closed doors. So it's to avoid all of that, and this community compact, in my opinion, has really helped. And I heard the other day when we were with Governor Baker that all the communities are on board now and have signed to the compact, and that's pretty wonderful.
Yeah,
I'm not sure which is more remarkable, that every community has signed one, which in itself is a Herculean task, or that the Lieutenant Governor has actually gone to every community in the Commonwealth to do the signing. Which is a testament to her. And Melissa, thank you for the compliment. The governor's a former selectman, Lieutenant Governor's a former select person. Me as a city manager, we really believe in local government. So, you know, you talk about economic development and the way that we work together. It's our practice to come to town and say, how can we help, as opposed to come to town and say, this is what you need to do. You know, so.
And one thing I've heard from the town perspective, from some of your staff, is then the processes are a lot easier in this administration.
And
to try to get some funding.
It excites you because they will say to you, and he has, particularly the secretary has said over and over, show me your commitment to this. And whether that is a local match, whether it's having it shovel ready, I find it really motivates both the staff and makes the public at large say, yes, we're willing to take a risk on this. You have everything lined up and ready to go. The secretary is very supportive. The grant says if you have everything ready, we're happy to match half of that. And we have seen that in Plymouth over and over.
What are some of the highlights, a couple of highlights of grants that you received from the administration?
Well, so of course you can't look at grant opportunities without looking at MassWorks. Talk about a wonderful combination between a public-private partnership. We have how long, I laugh because I've only been in Plymouth since 2004, but when we went to the ribbon cutting for Cordage, there are so many people that have waited over 25 years for that project to start. So you are looking at such a beautiful location, another anchor in the Plymouth community. I have a special spot for North Plymouth. I've said that before publicly, and the history of that area, and now you are going to have this fantastic development that incorporates affordable housing down the road. In phase 2 and 3, there'll be restaurants there, businesses already there. It's really going to revitalize that entire area. And then you look at the waterfront, and you look at the new, I still call it the T-Wharf. I really need to move away from that. But you look at the new wharf and the way that the fishermen and the lobstermen and the people that are going down there, how many times have you been down there now since we have built it? And you see people sitting there, walking there, watching everything happen. It's made a big difference. And that couldn't have been done without this administration and the secretary particularly.
Now, Jay, we talked earlier about the last hour of the session on July 31st at 11:59 p.m. For the record. We passed the Economic Development Bill. Talk about some of the highlights of that bill and how particularly benefit towns like Plymouth.
Well, it goes back to the bipartisanship that I was talking about. We have a Republican governor and Democratic legislature who came together to support an economic development bill that will provide $1 billion worth of resources for me to go around the state and to listen to local perspectives. $1 billion would be to go around the state, listening to communities about what their hopes and dreams are for their communities, and then have the resources to help that along. So you've been kind enough to talk about the MassWorks program. That's a big chunk of what the economic development bill will support. We have future funding to do more kind of the classic economic development tools. We come in and provide public infrastructure dollars in return for private support there afterwards. And Cordage Park is a great example of that. You know, we come in and we help build a roadway, which will remain in public control. And then you see all the economic development that takes place around it: mixed-use development, housing, retail, offices, and so we have that available. And Plymouth has benefited, as well as 35 communities last year, and throughout our whole economic tool case, about half of the communities over the last 4 years have benefited from something. So we have that money available to us, but there's more. There's a Seaport Council gets funded, and Seaport Council is important to coastal communities like Plymouth. And
actually, I think Plymouth just benefited from the Seaport Council.
We sure did. You're going to finally see a new maritime facility down on our harbor, right next to and behind East Bay Grill, that incorporates transient boaters, transient facilities, public restrooms, a wonderful new actual facility that include an education component, and that absolutely would not have happened without the Seaport Council.
Yeah, so we help communities revitalize, and you see that through the MassWorks program or through the Seaport Council. We all just had a meeting about dredging, and
I was just going to bring that up.
In my travels around the state, you know, I've gotten to about 160 communities. I listen to what people are talking about, what they need, and what I heard over and over again was this recurring theme that we've got waterways that haven't been dredged in a decade or a generation or 2 generations, and that's where I said, whoa, once I heard 2 generations, we have to do something about it. So you were kind enough, Melissa, to open up a town hall. We had a big meeting here, more than 120 people representing South Shore communities. I held a similar one in Beverly with North Shore communities, and we were able to put together a program around dredging, and we're making our first round of dredging awards actually today. The Lieutenant Governor will be on the Cape making $3.5 million worth of dredging awards available. So resources to help communities. That's a piece. It's kind of a 3-legged stool of economic development. The second piece is to help businesses grow. And Massachusetts is known for its innovation, right? And so we continue to innovate and provide funding, both on the kind of global level, a 30,000-foot level, to help do research and development in places like MIT or Harvard or even Bridgewater State down here. And then smaller dollars to help small businesses in downtowns or small businesses that are manufacturers. Like we've had great success with manufacturing, for example, over the last 3 years where unemployment is growing. So that's the second part of it. And then the last part of it is none of that matters if we're not helping people. And so helping people find the opportunities to grab their own rung along a ladder of success is important. And we do things like workforce training grants to places like Plymouth. I think your high school benefited from grants to help with auto body and with nursing. We have an apprenticeship program, a new program as part of this economic development bill that will help businesses hire apprentices for 2 years, get a tax credit to do that, continue the training so that people can get even more skills and go off and be more gainfully employed.
What sort of jobs will those be?
3 focus areas are healthcare, which is huge. We've done one of the things I learned from the governor is to compartmentalize big problems. So you look at workforce training on the state level, you can get kind of overwhelmed by the challenges. So we've boiled down to 7 regions and look at those regions. Each of the regions have come to us and said we have significant healthcare needs now for our workforce, and we project them into the future. So healthcare is one area. Manufacturing that I've talked about is a second area, and IT is a third area. So if you're a business in one of those industries and you want to take on an apprentice, you can take on an apprentice for 2 years, get a $4,800 tax credit each year for those 2 years. Maybe keep that employee, or if you don't keep that employee, the employee has benefited from 2 more years of experience and education and can move off and do something else somewhere else.
You know, your administration has been very successful too in attracting large companies for economic development, like GE.
Yeah.
You know, why do you think companies like GE and Amazon and companies like this want to come to Massachusetts?
Yeah, I'd like to say it's because of me, but that's not the case. It's actually because of all of us, and when I say all of us, not only the 3 people here, but everybody who's watching at home. I talk about talent all the time. Our talent unquestionably is number 1. And so when you put talent on the table and you have businesses that value innovation, where we're number 1 as well, we're number 1 nationally in innovation, you put those together, it's an easy discussion to have. There was a time, maybe 30 or 40 years ago when companies were sending jobs overseas. At that time it was about cost. They were trying to get the cheapest talent possible. That actually worked to our benefit because they realized when they went overseas that the talent wasn't worth what they were paying for it. And so they're flocking back here. And the combination of that along with, we have great research and development, always have here. Governor jokes all the time, the Massachusetts success story is you help to establish 2 great institutions. It means Harvard and MIT, and then you wait 200 years.
Yeah, right.
But for 200 years, Harvard and MIT have been pumping out this stuff. Yeah. So we've been doing great research and development. Now that companies want their manufacturing or their processing to be over here, together with research and development so they can interact, it really plays into our strong suit.
So it leads into the next topic that I really want to talk about. That's a big part of what you do is housing as well. And Melissa, I know that here in Plymouth, we are probably one of the largest growing communities in the Commonwealth with housing. What sort of other needs do you see? Affordable housing, workforce housing, in the town and the area?
We do. We hear a lot. We had a study done, economic development study. We wanted something more formal to look at when it came to our housing, and needs are changing. People want to live in places where they're within either walking distance to, you hear that, work, live, play, but it's where you can have your job, you can walk to restaurants, you can interact with other people. There's an exerciser component to it. There's educational facilities available. So Plymouth needs to do a better job of recognizing there is a population that wants that kind of housing. And I think you see that boom in our waterfront, down street, that whole area, where people are looking to live in places that are potentially up and above commercial development, up and above retail development. And you're going to see that now with some new projects that we have in Plymouth, one going into down by Commerce Way, one that will go into Colony Place. It will be a 55 plus, which there is a demand for too, particularly in Plymouth where we have a growing, I'm going to say over 50 population, not aging population, but over 50 population with demands for services, use of we're not going to call it the senior center anymore. Now it's strictly not even the conservation center for active living. They want to be able to have resources available to them to live well. And that is important to us. But in addition to that, we need to work a little bit on our affordable housing. Affordable housing has had a stigma. It's unnecessary. It's so many of our teachers and our police officers and public workers and people that want to remain living in the community, but may need to start a little differently. Plymouth is so big that to try and achieve that 10% has been a challenge for us. But you're starting to see us make strides with some of the developments going on now, and I think that's going to make a difference to retain some of the people that we want to keep here after they're educated. We want to keep them working here and living here.
And the administration has heard this, not just from Plymouth, but throughout. And I know there was a bond bill that was passed by the House for housing. And there's some legislation that's still pending, but can you talk about some of that?
Yeah, the relationships that I've talked about, that got us an economic development bill, also got us a housing bond bill. So the legislature this session adopted a $1.8 billion affordable housing bill that'll allow us to build affordable housing around the Commonwealth for the next 5 years. Affordable housing is an important part of what we offer. I grew up in affordable housing, and if not for the assistance of state and federal government, I would have been homeless and had difficulty completing my school and then going on and doing all the other things, including becoming secretary. So affordable housing is important. What we hear and what you've referenced to is what we call housing that's affordable. So there's a traditional affordable housing, and then there's housing that's affordable. And those are people who are out working, that are teachers, that are police officers, and are finding it increasingly more difficult to find an affordable place to live in the community they want to live. And we have resources to be able to assist on that as well. Housing is an important part. It's really the linchpin of everything else that happens individually until you have a safe and affordable house, roof over your head. You can't think about anything else. And as a community, if you're not building enough housing for people at all spectrums, all age spectrums, you're not going to be able to take advantages that are out there. So we work an awful lot with local communities. And when I look at my economic development toolbox, if there's a ask that includes a housing project, it moves up on the list of potential awardees. And that's what we saw at Cottage Park and why we were so supportive there.
Yeah, yeah. And there's some pending legislation that I think it's a housing choice that we're talking about. Can you talk a little bit about that and how that may help communities?
Yeah, for about 2 decades, the legislature's been wrestling with trying to make it easier to permit bigger housing projects. And there are a lot of communities that are not growth communities, and then there are communities that would love to see the housing projects, but they still can't get through the local process in order to make it happen. We need to build more and more housing. The governor's committed to building 135,000 units of housing over the next 5 or 6 years, and in order to do that, we need to partner with local communities. So we have a housing choice bill that came very close to passing last year, so that gives us encouragement as we enter into a new legislative calendar. And the idea there is to allow for a majority vote by the community in question to be able to approve zoning that allows for housing to move forward. The other point that I make about housing, and I was thinking about it as you were talking about it, because everything that you talked about and the importance of housing, you typically associate with cities. So there's globally, people talk about there's a flock back to cities. And of course, Plymouth is a town. And you shouldn't confuse city and town in this case. What people want is they want an active lifestyle. It's what you've described. And I just had an opportunity to be in your downtown. It's great downtown and very walkable, very accommodating, and great housing options around there. People want to live there. And so some people, yes, will want to be in downtown Boston. Some people will want to be in Kendall Square in Cambridge. But most people just want to be in a place where they can walk outside the door, go to a restaurant, do some shopping, exercise, have some fun in the park, do some culture. And that's what makes Plymouth's downtown very special. You can do all of that.
One of the things I hear, and I think you hear this too from our elected officials, particularly folks in the planning board or folks that are appointed to the zoning boards, is the affordability factor of some of this. That I believe the formula is based on the median of the Boston area.
Yes.
Is there any movement or any talk about making it maybe more local, as people really want to live in the local area? Like even if it's just Plymouth, the median income for Plymouth County or the median income for the town. Is there any discussions or any thoughts about that?
It really isn't, and it's all about data and what data you can get your hands on. And that hypersensitive data that you're talking about, hyper-local data, is very difficult. So it does create some problems in meeting different ratios and things like that. We try to offset that with making more dollars available to communities that are more challenged.
Yeah, 'cause I know in Plymouth, I think I always keep hearing that the median household wage is more like 70 or 80,000. Yet the Boston one is like 110 to 120, so it makes it a little bit more difficult. So that's interesting to know that. So interesting. So a couple things I want to ask you about.
Oh, you're smiling.
Yeah, this, and I know you'll appreciate this, Melissa, because you just started to be on social media. But talk about your social media that you do, and you do yourself,
I have a great time with it.
particularly on Twitter.
Yeah, everybody should be following me, J Ash,
Yeah.
EOHED, at J Ash, EOHED. And, you know, I travel an awful lot, work an awful lot of hours, and, you know, you're focused on work. And I find social media is a good release. I've met a lot of people over social media and enjoy meeting them. I go around the state and often will hook up with followers. I do something called Frap with Followers. And, I'm a big chocolate Frap fan.
Did you get
in
one
fact,
today, by the
Melissa
way?
brought me one from
From where is it?
Peaceful.
Meadows. So I find that social media is a good way also to allow people to get to know you a little bit differently.
Mm-hmm.
The different, you know, I walk in with the big suit on, you know, the suit and a big guy, and people have an opinion about me. And then when I get to be a little bit more irreverent on social media, it opens up and it breaks down barriers and allows for better communication.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
when I was city manager, I had something called the Inside Scoop. I used to send 1,000 emails. I had 1,000 people on my email list, and I would send it around to the community, the Inside Scoop, because people always want to know, you know, what's the inside scoop, what's really happening. And I use it to inform the public, but also to share my personality, whether you like it or not, and to make sure that they knew what was going on. And to this day, when I go back home, people don't thank me for balancing budgets or bringing hotels to the community. They say, boy, we really miss the inside
Yeah.
scoop. So
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
reinforced that social media, used the right way, can be a powerful
absolutely,
communications
absolutely,
tool
yeah.
and a way to develop relationships that sometimes in this fast-paced world that we live in, we don't get to.
Yeah, and
really
it's
promote.
great. It is great to follow you. I do follow you. And
Yes, you do. Thank you.
You're great to see. It's good to see different parts of the Commonwealth that you go to and how they do things, et cetera. So it's very powerful.
Yeah, I feel like that's part of my job too. Is
Yeah.
to, you know, so tourism comes under me,
Yeah.
something that's important to Plymouth, and so
Yeah, very important.
I feel like when I'm going around the state and I see something that I didn't know existed, you know, I can't wait to get on
Yeah.
and tweet about it. So, and I have some, you know, I have some fun with it.
Yeah, you do.
Thank you
Yeah.
for teasing me every now and then,
Yeah.
and you know, we'll have a picture of the chocolate milkshake up soon. But yeah, social media is an important part of how to communicate with people,
Yeah.
and basically the communication is at the end of the day. That's the
Yeah.
important thing, right?
Yeah.
We all know that you need to listen to people, and then you need to be able to respond to them. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
social
Yeah.
media is a way to do that.
Yeah, well, this is, I really appreciate you coming out here today,
Oh,
coming
thank
to
you.
Plymouth, and all the times you've been coming to the Plymouth and the administration for what you've done for the town of Plymouth, and really preparing for 2020. And thank you for the great job that you always do for the town, and really glad that you both were able to be here today and really to talk about why the state really does matter to, you know, to the local community. So thank you both for coming. I
thanks
really
for having me.
appreciate that. We hope you enjoyed today's show and found it informative. Thanks once again to all the folks at PAC TV for all you do. We will see you next time on State Matters.